So I'm sure we'll have lots of questions. We will start with your advisory team.
Okay.
Well done, Ms. Nicoll. You did a phenomenal job of bringing an extremely complicated topic, and yes, a 50-page paper, down to something I was willing to read.
Understandable.
And explaining it in a way that is still complicated, yet we can understand it.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you, but I told you I'd ask you one, and then I forgot it, and I remembered it. You talk a lot about the hero method.
Mm-hmm.
I loved how you ended on a happy note.
Yeah.
That's really important, I think, to our world. How can we prepare people for power? Can we prepare people for power? You talked about raising altruism, but can we actually do it?
Well, I think if we put children in these heroism courses, that it will definitely benefit not only themselves but their environment, and also prepare them if they ever decide to go into a career of law or politics. Yes, that's definitely a keystone. It will build a strong base to keep their morality in check and their compassion, and to make sure to be aware of a situation in which they can understand, oh, that actually might affect me negatively. I can back away from that now and remove myself from that situation. So it helps them develop that. Also, I think with our system we actually have now in democracy, where we have, legislative, federal, judicial, all these different systems that are put into place to actually kind of separate the power, dilute it a bit, so that not one direct person has everything, like a dictatorship. It helps people mitigate themselves, and with laws especially, I think children are more aware of that.
Okay, and can we do it at IPS? Do we need to do it at IPS?
Honestly, IPS is like a little family, right? Everyone is in somewhat of a bond with each other, and we kind of have to all be friends, right? And so I think with that, there's not necessarily a course needed here specifically with this environment, but definitely in high schools where you actually see a lot of bullying and a lot of cruel acts committed, it's definitely something that actually I would like to see in primary schools, and then maybe moving into secondary schools.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fantastic job, Mirella.
Thanks, Julie.
So in your research, have you found any differences between men and women and how they're influenced by power?
Actually, I did look about that for a bit. There actually really wasn't anything I saw specifically, which is definitely something I think someone should look into, not necessarily me, but I definitely think someone might want to conduct an experiment on that, because that's a very fascinating thing. But as you see with the Stanford Prison Experiment and the Milgram Experiment, those were specifically focused on males. So we see how men react to power. Well, how do women? In my personal opinion, I theorize because women have more of a maternal instinct, we see them as more kind, generous, compassionate, because they have this key part in their genetic code where they're, so they fall in love with their children, that they find them cute, they find things cuddly, they are compassionate towards others, right? I think that would actually cause them to be more aware of the evil in this world, and try to keep themselves a bit more kind of checked on power dynamics and obsession with power. I think that is a little less likely with women, but of course, as you saw with Abu Ghraib, I actually didn't explain this, but out of the 20 plus soldiers that committed these acts, there was, I think, about three women actually with that. And so they acted they did about the same amount of disgusting things as the men did. And that just proves we're all human beings. We can all have our down points. And in reality, men and women, even though we're very different, we're not. And with power, it just depends on the person, how they were raised, how they were brought up, and heroism courses if that was put into place, right? It just really depends on the person. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Nicoll, what is the role of the society in the creation of power dynamics? In other words, do certain types of societies attract certain types of power seekers?
I think what I mentioned with Adrian as well, talking about power checks put into place, like let's say police officers, they have their chief, and then they have the police commissioner, and they have all these people watching out for the diffusion of power and making sure they're not abusing their power, even though that really sometimes does not work, as you see in a lot of the cases in media. I think with certain societies, such as the Western society, where democracy is a key cornerstone in our society, that it's actually a little less likely and probable for people immersed in that society to act more power hungry, to act more evil. As you can see in all the experiments and all the incidents that I've shown you, that was all kind of based around that was all Western society. Those were Caucasians and people raised in Western culture in North America. And so you can see with that, not every society is perfect. But with democracy and with just the way we've been raised in general, our social kind of rules, I guess you could say, we're all kind of conditioned to act in a way where we kind of accept everyone and are more willing to work with others, like a democracy with a bunch of people willing to share leadership rather than take all the power for yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Nicoll, one more question from me.
Okay.
Does the level of power you're given affect the amount that you change?
That is an amazing question. If I guess any of us looked at that, the obvious answer would be, of course, it would. But then again, there's people that kind of have a certain way, like you see in sometimes TV shows. There's like the leader of the group, like they're working on a project or whatever, and he just gets all of a sudden like super into it, and he's like, oh, I rule everything, I can control everything, right? So it just kind of shows people can seriously take advantage, and because their mind gets so warped with the newfound power that they're given, they could seriously act as if they're the president when they're just I don't know, the head of a school. Not you, Scott, not you, Scott, not you, Scott. Not you. That came out so wrong.
I was going to ask if that was reflected here, but
No,
we'll let that
it
one lie.
really isn't.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Why did you choose this project?
I don't know. I would say it's probably, I don't know. I think when we were on the camping trip, actually at the beginning of the year, someone, like, when we were all just hanging around in our circle talking about, like, thorns and roses, someone started, like, I don't know, giggling and then being like, I'm super power hungry or whatever. I remember that, and for some reason that transferred into my head as, wow, I wonder why that's the case. Why would someone act that way? Why are we conditioned to think if someone's given power, oh, they're just going to be like a total bad word about it, right? Like.
Very good job, Ms. Nicoll. So you say you want to put that heroism course into elementary schools and secondary schools. What do you think about having it in workplaces and teaching managers of workplaces how to function around their employees, not like, you know, I'm the big superpower, but kind of be on the same level as them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with heroism courses being placed into schools, that kind of, again, builds a foundation for them. But then, yes, when a person is put into management, they definitely would have to, like, maybe, you know, the owner of the business would have to, legally, I think this should actually be a thing. They should be pulled in and told, oh, you know, you cannot be drunk on the job. You cannot, you know, be high or whatever. You have to make sure you treat your employees with this level of kindness and this level of care, and you can't have, like, there should be a list. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. You know, it's like, you know, wrongful firing, right? Yeah.
First of all, I want to say thank you for a wonderful presentation, and I loved the way you used the graphics to bring it all to life. My question, you talked about education for heroes, and I was thinking about how we tend to notice the big heroes. You know, the ones who rush into the burning building or whatever. And has any research been done into some way of building into our society and our lives a more intrinsic way of recognizing the small heroes, the altruistic acts, and so that within schools, for example, the kids who step forward and do whatever, they get recognized. It doesn't have to be big recognition, but just if there's any research into looking at how to encourage that kind of behavior throughout society.
I haven't seen anything in that, but I know in general, teachers, parents, at least mine, encourage stepping forward and you know, being an upstander, right? Being able to recognize when a behavior is not okay and saying, that's not cool. And I know a lot of people get kind of scared about the whole, oh, what happens if the bully comes back and says, oh, you're not cool, or just like completely, like you're just stuck up, you're just being a snob, like stop being that way, and just uses a lot of terms that actually are very belittling of the person that stands up. But, you know, with people that are upstanders, that are heroes, they have to also understand that we're still in a society where a lot of the times people just follow the leader, regardless of if that leader is going towards a more negative side. And so we have to realize that not every single time we do a good deed, it's going to be recognized, but it should be, that fell again, it should be a thing in your mind, in your head, in your heart, that you should know that as soon as you do a good deed, you should feel better. It's something that does make you feel better. You know, you help out a friend, just fall and hurt their knee, whatever. You say, hey, are you okay? You help them up. You carry them off to, I don't know, back to their house, right? That feels good. Doing a good deed feels good, and that should be honestly enough of a recognition. But then again, with the bigger deeds, yeah, they're kind of blasted all over the media. But yeah.
I have two questions. One, do you think that it is possible for a good person to commit an evil deed and not be classified as evil by society?
That's definitely good. And I know, of course, not everyone is black and white, black or white. And like that's why I showed you the tessellation by M.C. Escher with angels and devils. Let's say that represents one person. They're not just one thing or the other. One person cannot just be completely good, or else we would be like injecting people with, I don't know, something. like we would all be completely fried. There would legitimately be, you know, how there's superheroes and villains fighting together in Marvel movies. Well, our society would probably just be that. And that's not how it is, you know? Everyone in this room, I bet, has done, you all seem like great people, but you've probably all done something that's a bit nasty, and you don't want to tell anybody, right? I mean, we're all guilty of that. And that's something we have to accept, that humans are flawed. But what we could do with these heroism courses and within our society is try to make each other better. Not perfect, but better. Right?
And also, so I know that a lot of people think that if put into the situation where someone was in trouble, they would help, but when actually put into that situation, they wouldn't do it. Do you think that children have the power to act heroically when adults can't?
Definitely. I think with children, actually, especially younger ones that, you know, kind of are more wide-eyed and have seen less of the world, but are more kind of open to how everything is, and they're actually a bit more willing to say, hey, that's not cool, right? Like with adults, they're like, oh, this is the norm, or oh, I just have to get used to this and just power through it. The children's like, no, that's not okay. And I've seen multiple children that have said that to their parents if they're saying something that might not be okay about another person. But with heroism courses in general, it teaches kids to be even more outgoing and to be even more accepting of other people and to like stand up better and be more willing to communicate. Yeah.
Last question from Dr. Spear.
Ms. Nicoll, that was a remarkable presentation.
Thank you.
You covered a heck of a lot of ground. You did a great job surveying all those experiments and all the rest of it. I have a couple of sort of background questions and then a foreground question. The background question, you don't have to answer the background ones, but try the foreground one. The background question would be, given your understanding of social psychological profile of human beings, how do you apply that to, let's say, a case or an experience that Island Pacific School. So what I want you to imagine, you said sort of kindly that IPS is a small place, family, everyone's happy. That's true, but the truth is we've had some moments that aren't our best moments, right?
yeah.
And so I'm thinking, so what I want you to imagine a case in the past 4 years of something that didn't go well and which we didn't present ourselves as best as we could. So think about that. And I want to know, sort of given your understanding of social psychological theory and all the rest of it, so imagine a case, let's say it's a bullying thing or it's some kid was being a jerk to another kid or something like that. And it just didn't go well, right? So can you kind of point your finger to what's the piece that was missing that we didn't do well that, you know, we could have, given your understanding of social psychological?
Okay. Well, with social psychology, it focuses mainly on the environment a person is in. So let's say an example that Jen has actually, something Jen has actually talked to the grade 9 class recently about, I'm not going to name names, but a student at Science World dumped a thing of water on top of another student's head. From a balcony, and they got in a lot of trouble. And what they did to reconcile with that was they went back to Science World and went clean for a day. And that's my understanding. But with that, I think, yes, it could have been mentioned at the very beginning, hey, these are rules, you cannot goof off, there will be serious consequences. Maybe that was said, I'm not too sure. But with these social environments that they're put in, it's not always that the environment itself is bad. It's just that the kids may be having an off day, or maybe the kid's just a little bit of a goofball. But it's not always the social situation a person is in, and you have to recognize that even though social psychology is brilliant and working with the environment is brilliant, it might also be the kid. It's not always just the environment. You have to keep psychology and social psychology separate and look at both of them before you make a full decision.
Yeah, you sort of answered in your presentation the sort of second part is, well, how do we do this? How do you actually cultivate? You had a very nice ending, this idea about, you know, if we could make heroism, altruism becomes a defining trait of humanity. That was a nice ending. But the question for schools is, okay, let's do that. But how do you actually cultivate? So you pointed to this heroism project, and you said, okay, and you said there's a thing called compassionate training, or compassionate, training. And then Emily referred to it, whether you do little steps or big steps. What's his name? Aristotle said that you enter the palace of virtue through the portal of habit. What he meant by that is that there's little things that you can do in order to end up, you know, hopefully doing the altruistic or heroic thing later on. But I just, I mean, do you think we should send kids, IPS kids, to heroism training, or do you think, no, you have more conversations with them about bystanders, or like, what do you do?
I think with such a small scale the school is in, sending these kids to heroism conferences and courses might not be the best idea, because we would consider if heroism courses was actually put into place, that would already be in primary schools, it would already be in the secondary school, so we don't need it necessarily for the small of a scale of IPS. But having like maybe once a month, or like once a month, having the kids all pulled in and said, hey, some really bad stuff's going on, if there's a serious issue in the school, this is how we deal with it, and this is how I want you guys to try to act. And maybe give them a reward for it. So say like, if you do these many good deeds that are actually true in your heart, that you're observing, that you're standing up for someone, you get these many house points. I don't know, whatever drives the student, right? Give them a reward for doing something kind, and then eventually it'll just become a natural thing. So they don't necessarily get a reward, but they know, I'm gonna feel amazing after this, right?
It's all about pizza.
It's all about pizza. It's all about pizza.
And on that note, Ms. Nicoll, you've done an incredible presentation. You've also answered a lot of questions. So a big round of applause, please.